My podcast today is with none other than India's most famous numismatist called Jo Nambiar. And I had the honor and the privilege to spend a few hours with her talking to him on screen and also behind the cameras. This lady was taking out various things. I saw the coin being brought in front of me. One look at that coin, Arun. You are the only person I know in my lifetime who has received a letter from the Queen of England. So one of the most incriminating evidence they can find against you is a weapon. So this is that box that was given by the Queen's first cousin. North, south, east, west, no place was safe from these thugs. You have managed to upset the Pakistani archaeological department. Many of the artifacts and many of the treasures from the subcontinent were mostly concentrated in Delhi. What does it have to do with the Mysore royal family? During the time they attacked the Guruvayur temple too, they thought they would be able to translate those documents. I would say you're a trained killer. You can kill people. And Haydar is supposed to have told him, listen, hold a whip in one hand. We call it the korula. Hold a whip in one hand and you'll find you'll be a very good governor. That's all you need. Don't depend on these people who use pen and paper. A sword works better sometimes. Jo, I have heard through my sources and my research that you have managed to upset the Pakistani archaeological department, and this story that I researched for the podcast, for my understanding, absolutely, it just blew me away. The reason I framed this question this way is because I want to know, what did you do to upset them?
I didn't do anything to upset them, but there's a background to this whole thing. You know, when the India and Pakistan were divided, many of the artifacts and many of the treasures from the subcontinent were mostly concentrated in Delhi. Obviously, because the British were ruling from Delhi, so museums were in Delhi, the archaeological department, the head office or, the main office was in Delhi, and people were studying in there. Now, what had happened was, this pertains particularly to this the Harappan civilization and Mohenjo-daro being the place. So, there was excavation going on in Mohenjo-daro, and among the various artifacts found there, like you must have heard of the priest king, the dancing girl, the bull. Those were actually seals. So a number of things were found there, and they were all kept in the museum in Delhi. When the partition took place in 1947, it's terrible when I narrate the story to you. There was a tussle over who should get these artifacts. Essentially, it belonged to the Indian tradition, the Indian culture, the Indian history, and it's already concentrated in Delhi. It's all placed in Delhi, kept in Delhi. But when Pakistan was formed, they demanded all the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro artifacts, because now when the place was divided, that province now went into Pakistan. So they felt that was their heritage. So there was this terrible thing that was happening, that everything was being divided. You keep half, I keep half, kind of thing. As this tussle was going on, the archaeological department and even necklaces, valuable necklaces of that culture, of that probably 4,000 to 5,000 years old, was actually being snipped with a scissor, and half the necklace was being given to India and half the necklace there. That doesn't become a necklace anymore, right? So as these artifacts were being divided in this terrible way, Mortimer Wheeler, who was one of the principal archaeologists, excavators in Mohenjo-daro, he had found a 4 feet long necklace in the granary area, okay? And it was still in his possession, and as he would normally keep till he studies it and then hands it over to the archaeological department. But then the riots broke out, the war broke out between India and Pakistan, that There were refugees moving in both directions, and he somehow didn't declare this necklace. And he even felt, it's a terrible thing. They would cut it in half, and they would give part of the necklace to Pakistan, part of the necklace to India. So it had been in his possession. I think the British, the Indian government were all involved in this whole partition problem and the riots, and this necklace was quite forgotten and it was in his possession. The story goes that it was in his possession for some time, and finally when he was leaving India, he had initially given it to his wife. I think it was his third wife. He had handed this necklace over to her, but she was a little superstitious, said, look, I don't want to take anything from the subcontinent and take it away. We don't know what this necklace was really. And it was gifted to Mrs. Gardner, and a lady staying in Shimla. It was just gifted to her, and they went their way. And it was virtually unrecorded. Okay? Some people in Pakistan knew about it, and its disappearance was not really, the focus of it was not the focus of attention. But then came the 71 war and the Shimla Agreement and all that. And I know that, at least that's what it said. It said that Mrs. Gandhi is supposed to have given the priest king to Pakistan. And the dancing girl is still here in India. Okay? It's a very beautiful figure of a dancing girl. And among the things divided, this necklace went without ownership. Neither Pakistan nor India could quite possess it because it was British ruling that place at that time, and it should have been British property, right? It should have been handed over to the British government. When Mortimer Wheeler didn't declare it, and finally it went into a private collection in the sense he gave it to his wife, the wife gave it to Mrs. Gardner. I came to know of this story, and that's another conversation as to how I came to know about it. But when I came to know about it, as I said, I was always intrigued by these strange stories of strange artifacts, unique artifacts. After a lot of search, I managed to find out where Mrs. Gardner stayed, in Shimla. I visited her, and over time I acquired it. So, yes, it's in my private collection. It's I've declared it in the sense it's there in a number of magazines, and a lot of historians and archaeologists have come and seen it too, verified it and all that. They weighed it and all that. But what has happened is that often I've been getting emails, or I've been getting phone calls from strange people saying that it should be returned to Pakistan. Till I came across an article in the Tribune, Pakistan, where one of the archaeologists was saying, no, it shouldn't be lying in a private collection, it should be given to Pakistan. Really speaking, its ownership cannot be Pakistan or India. It was the British. And they left it here with Mrs. Gardner, and I acquired it from her. But the fascinating thing is that such a necklace exists, and it's an amazing piece of work.
So I have seen that necklace, not in person, but I've seen pictures of it, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing.
It's a beautiful necklace.
7 strands.
Yeah.
Each is 4 feet long.
Wow. So that's why they call it the Queen's necklace.
Well, yeah, like they say the priest king. We don't know if that was a priest king. And they believe there was no dynasty ruling. There's a priest king ruling the place. But we don't even know whether there's a dancing girl at all, but we believe it's a dancing girl, yeah.
So I want to circle back to the curse that we spoke about on the Wadiyar family. What is the story behind the palm leaf manuscripts that you possess in your collection, in your huge collection of artifacts and coins and everything? What does it have to do with the Mysore royal family?
Well, essentially there were 2 documents. See, the Dutch were in India. They had tried to attack Kerala. As you know, there's a story which is hardly spoken about, but the fact is the Dutch were defeated. by Marthandavarma in a naval battle. If they had not been defeated, they were the maritime force of these days, of those days, okay? Much better than the British in terms of a navy. And you and me would be speaking Dutch if they had been able to. But then the thing is, they were stopped in Kerala. During the time, they attacked the Guruvayur temple too. And a certain portion of the temple they tried to burn. Anyway, when they were defeated, they moved on to Indonesia, and they carried along with them a lot of looted manuscripts, hoping that by reading the manuscript, they would find out which temples had gold and where they were hidden. They thought they would be able to translate those documents. But then the Japanese attacked Borneo and, Malaysia and that area. And many of these documents got burned and destroyed during the battle over there. The Dutch had colonies there, see. Anyhow, one amazing document remained in which is actually today in the possession of the Maharaja of Mysore, which narrates this whole story of Alemalama. Okay, now it's very interesting to know. There's a document which tells the story of the curse and everything in a manuscript, which was handed, I don't know when it was handed, but His Highness Shrikanta Wadiyar confirmed to me that this is how they know the story of Alemalama. Apart from the oral tradition, that's how they know about it. But again, Alemalama herself, in those days, possessed another set of manuscript called the Krishna Pata. It was a religious document.
The Krishna?
Krishna Pata.
Krishna Pata.
Yeah. Song to Krishna kind of thing, devotional thing. And this is supposed to have been in Alemalama's possession because she was a pious lady, as I told you. And that somehow wound up in Kerala. Okay, that's Krishna Pata document and wound up in Kerala. There's a story behind that too, because there was a priest, was always the priest which Alemalama used for her prayers and her religious duties. That priest was from Kerala. So after Alemalama's suicide at Kaveri, he brought this document with him to Kerala, this entire Krishna Pata. And that has been there for a long time, till someone was to be able to decipher that this is the manuscript which came from Mysore, from Srirangapatnam, or it came either from there or from Mailangi, Talakad, where she committed suicide and was brought to Kerala. So that is one of the documents I have with me.
Wow. So that manuscript verifies the curse belt by the queen.
No, that's the manuscript which contains all her religious duties and her prayers and her. So basically, it's a song to Krishna, as they say. Okay, so it was part of, like you would today have the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible with you as your main, source of inspiration and prayers. She had this manuscript with her.
Yeah. So what I meant to say was that this manuscript, which belonged to her, is another document that validates that she actually existed and actually was a real person who cast a curse on the king. Because what happens that I have noticed is that as soon as people start talking about occult and supernatural, people like her, they suddenly become mythical human beings that no, maybe she never existed. It is just a story,
Yes, but there are, of course, other historical records that show very clearly that Rangaraja had a wife called Chellamma and also this lady, Alemalama. That's very much on record. The curse is also recorded in various texts. But this is even a finer detail if you look at it, that such a manuscript which she used for her prayers existed, which wound up in Kerala.
Wow.
That was interesting.
Jo, so far your life, it sounds like a dream. It sounds like I'm sitting with 4 people or 5 people, not one single human being. The way you've collected artifacts, you're carrying a weapon with you today for my podcast. You're carrying a box which is, compared to the antiquity you have, is nothing, but it has value. You are amongst the most respected numismatists in the world. I checked Wikipedia, and I have heard a speech given at the governor's house in 2012 when your book Fasigar was released, where it was mentioned that you had close to 16,000 coins. It's an unbelievable figure. Tell me the story of this of your collection.
My interest in numismatics started during my grandfather's time, on my mother's side again. So I was a child, and I was too fascinated by various coins he had. Obviously, he had some fascination for collection, but nobody in the family seemed interested in things like that. And there were these coins which I noticed which had a little hole in them, and he had quite a bit of number of coins in a chest, kept in a chest. And many years later, after he passed away, these coins were lying in a bag. Can you imagine? Just tied in a sack and kept aside somewhere in one dark room in our ancestral room. So I picked it up, and over time I added to that collection. And what happens is, when you are interested in a subject like numismatics, you cannot avoid history, obviously. So you try to look at the antecedents of these coins and who minted them, which part of the country it came from. And my interest grew and grew and grew till, came to a point when they mentioned 16,000 coins at the Raj Bhavan, when they were releasing my book, Fasigar, when he mentioned 16,000 coins, it's actually not the number of coins that's important, because you do find hoards, which are called hoards. You find buried around the world, which is the same coin, but tons of it, So that could just count to be 16,000. But what's unique in my collection is that many of my coins are diverse. They are from various ages, from before Christ to recent coins which are rare. And I'll tell you why recent coins are rare. There are these coins which are released by the Reserve Bank of India as commemorative coins, So like you had in Philately, I think, stamps also released. They are limited edition. Okay, then what makes my collection rare is there's everything from leather coins to various coins. And also you have, for example, fakes which are historically important. Why are fakes important? Take Tughlaq. What happened to Tughlaq was, we know in history that he did some very mad things, like trying to change the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. He was too ahead of his times, okay? He wanted to introduce a form of currency which didn't involve gold and silver. So he took all the gold and silver into his coffers, into the treasury, and issued coins which was represented a certain value, copper coins. But he went bankrupt because people were able to duplicate them. In those days, they knew how to duplicate those coins, so that those became Tughlaq's fakes.
Okay,
but it's historically important to own that fake coin, because it is something that happened in time of history, right? In those days, that there was the original coin by Tughlaq and there was a fake by Tughlaq. Tughlaq's subjects who made them. Similarly, you have Jerusalem fakes. Various places. So you have to understand numismatics to a point of understanding why a certain coin changed in weight, metallurgy, the patina, or certain inscriptions that were either added on or removed due to a change in the dynastic rule, or being overthrown by another kingdom, or for some economic reasons they've changed the content of silver in it. It's quite a deep study. But it became so interesting for me that I kind of still value it as something I should continue doing. So I still possess a large collection, yes. You're right.
I saw your name in a list on Wikipedia, which starts off from about 2,000 years ago. And it starts off from one of the Roman kings on all the way down to, people who have coins today. And in my understanding, I think you hold the second largest coin collection in India.
So I've been told. In fact, even this Wikipedia bit, only you brought it to my attention. But yes, I found I was listed there. And
Very interesting. Now, this is a very, very, how do I put it across? This is a very intriguing bit about your life. I would say you're a trained killer. You can kill people. And that's what I've gotten to know. I mean, you are an expert in martial arts at a level where even a leopard will be scared of you.
I think that's exaggerating it.
Yeah.
I did have a leopard as a pet. That's a different. But leopard was quite tame, let me tell you.
There is a very famous martial arts in Kerala called Kalari Paitu. Yeah. And you are a practitioner of Kalari Paitu. You've done Kung Fu also in your life. And I have seen pictures of you flying in the air, practicing Kung Fu. Can you tell me about this martial arts story of your life?
Everyone's like this. I grew up in Shillong, okay? And as it happens, I don't blame anyone for it. When you're ethnically different, that's your features, and you're in a place where you look different from the regular population, it just happens among boys. It's a social thing that you get targeted. Bully, to put it. So initially, I was more focused on athletics. I was doing middle and long distance running, and I was not into combat or even thinking of violence. Then you get pushed around a little bit, till finally I thought I should learn to defend myself. It started off with Taekwondo, actually. One of the first Taekwondo exponents who taught in India was a person called Sonny Chung. So I picked up a little bit of Taekwondo from him. But over time, I was quite aware that, okay, all these flashy high kicks and, all this looked good on camera or looked good in a photograph, but on the street, you needed something far more effective, especially if you have to deal with multiple people. Not that I was the one who went out looking for a fight, but when it came, I knew I could handle myself only if I knew something that could, draw blood and subdue an opponent immediately, instantly. And I kept searching for this. So contemporaries of mine who were doing Taekwondo, they continued doing it, while I quietly slipped out of that. And I ran into this gentleman called Rudra Shareg Lama. Now, he was a monk and he was a Tibetan monk. But every time I jogged past that monastery, I remember he should be doing something that looked to me like a dance. But it seems to be some kind of an exercise. But it was nothing I knew from what I had done in Taekwondo. But this looked totally different. Over a period of time, I befriended him, and I just asked him whether I could learn what he was doing. It was boring initially because he would spend more time doing rituals and making me sit and meditate, and I didn't realize the value of that. But yes, he was a very foundational teacher in the sense he went deep into changing your mind, the whole concept of combat, understanding the need to learn something like this, at the same time be a very peaceful human being. Be lethal, but keep your sword in the scabbard, he always said. But what he taught was definitely lethal. And it did not involve things that looked spectacular in movies or in photographs. They were very short, sharp, very precise blows, not intended to impress anyone, but intended to bring the man down immediately, instantly. You can't waste your breath or time or energy trying to fight if it's to show how good you are. What you should be doing is stopping that aggression at that very point of time it comes to you. So it had to be something that was so fast, so, I would say, lightning fast, but so precise and so sure that it is, if 4 people were there, attacking you, it should be one blow, one man down. So I realized this is the most effective art I knew at that day. And I quietly started training under him. And for quite some time, I continued training under him. I was very quiet about it because I had issues with my family at that time where the focus was more on education and studies, which I did quite well, in fact. But I was trying to balance this out between doing martial arts, and I used to be terribly exhausted at the end of it, and then trying to study for my exams and all the other interests I have, as you know. So I used to fill my day with all this. But from there, I knew that traditionally our own families in Kerala, the Kshatriyas, that's the Nayars and the Nambiars, we already had an art in the family called Kalari. There were very few practitioners left in the family who actually practiced it. But in the clan itself, in the community itself, there were some real masters. So occasionally I started training under one master. And over a period of time, I knew that they had taught me enough to go and practice on my own. So wherever I was in the world, and whenever I got the opportunity, I kept practicing it until I was able to finally graduate in Kalari, to a point that I actually won the appreciation of this man who was teaching me. So that's how. So you say I'm a trained killer. If martial artists are taught well, most of them can be killers. But it's actually an aspect of the art itself, that it's the root of most martial arts in the world. So therefore, it's a very little art.
So based on your journey in martial arts, what I have understood is that you've learned Taekwondo. You
A little bit.
have learned a lot of Kung Fu. And you have also mastered Kalari.
Yes.
That's amazing. So out of these three forms, which is the most lethal form of martial arts?
Well, this is debatable, but often the effectiveness of any martial art is based on the exponent's, ability to use the art to its best. I don't think there's such a thing as the best martial art. Okay, but yes, the martial art that opens out more possibilities in terms of being able to handle a situation would be the most effective one. So there is no best, but I like to think that any art which is not restricting its technique and flow, a martial art which is, very fluid, and an art which is less showy, less spectacular, but more effective, is eventually what will help you actually utilize it. The pioneer dynamics of such an art will be the best.
Okay. Joe, my next question to you is that as per William Logan's book, someone in your clan was instrumental in bringing now Tipu Sultan, was responsible for the fall of Tipu Sultan. Can you tell me the story?
Well, I don't know if you notice, most of my stories are related to my family. So which basically means that I'm not a historian or archaeologist who is just understand it conventionally. My interest has mostly been because of family history. I'm very curious about where my family came from. And I'm sure any family would like to know where their ancestors came from. And the more I'm discovering about my family, it's been fascinating. So there is this story by William Logan, who was actually from the Madras Civil Service, who published a book called Logan's Manual, while he was a commissioner or collector, I think, of Malabar, and it was published somewhere in 1887. As I was reading through this manual, just generally to understand the history around my homeland, one of the things I discovered was about the capture of a young boy from Cherakal, at the age of, he must have been about 12 or 14 years old, but an excellent exponent of Kalari. And he was a obviously, when Hyder invaded Malabar in 18, no, I think that was, the book was published in 1887. Yeah. He had, I think Hyder had invaded Malabar in 1766. And this boy was among the many prisoners captured. But Hyder's attention immediately went to this boy because, first of all, the boy was physically an amazing looking boy for that age. And he was brave, fighting back, though he was injured and things like that. And in fact, yes, he was found injured. Anyhow, he was among the prisoners captured. What caught my attention really to the story was when it was mentioned that Logan mentions that he was caught from a place, or he belonged to a house called Pudiyavide. Could you repeat that name? Pudiyavide. Okay, I know it's difficult to pronounce. In Malayalam, it probably means new house. Okay, Pudiyavide means new house. And the location. And so I suddenly realized that this is a family connection. Because our ancestral home has shifted at least 3 or 4 times. Okay, 3 definitely I know. And the location, the last house which was demolished a couple of decades ago, or which was removed for its timber and, as if a giant family system disintegrated. I know that was I know where it was moved from. It was because a railway line had to come through, so the British government wants to acquire the land, so they compensated the family, and the family moved. And an amazing house called Dharwad was again built. And it was known at that time that was the 3rd time they had to move. Okay, at least. So that became Pudeywood, the new house. So when I heard that this boy belonged to the new house, I realized that's my ancestral home. You understand? So when Logan mentioned Pudeywood from Kannur, Charakkal district, it's near Charakkal, no? I understood where Pudeywood was, and I asked a few locals also about the history of the place where the Annapurna Ishwari temple was. It's the Annapurna Ishwari temple. So I came to know the location, and I knew one thing that for certain, that this boy belonged to our family. So it generated an interest, and I started. So like I said, I'm not a historian as you would think of, and I'm more involved in family history. So I went into studying about this boy, and I realized that he had been taken to Srirangapatna and converted. Okay, his original name was Kamaran or Kumaran. I'm not sure, Kamaran or Kumaran Nambiar. Okay. When he was converted, he was given the name Muhammad Ayaz in Srirangapatna. He was converted, and he was, for some time, he obviously was a slave, but the sheer beauty of the guy, his ability to do kalari. You must remember, kalari started from a very young age, the age of 4 or 5. So if he was 12 or 14 in those days, he was quite an exponent already. Just seeing his martial abilities, Hyder took a liking for him to such an extent that he started comparing that boy with Tipu, which enraged Tipu. So it's a very funny story. So as they grew up together, Tipu must have been about the same age. As they grew up together, there was a rivalry between the slave and the heir to the dynasty, that is Tipu. And Hyder didn't seem to give a damn because he kept praising this boy to such an extent that there was an incident when a Britisher was circumcised in public. Okay, one of the captured British soldiers, and which Tipu was involved in, and so Hyder was a little upset about that, and he punished Tipu by putting Tipu in solitary confinement, during which time Hyder is supposed to have yelled that I wish not you, but this boy, Ayaz, that is our Jo Nambiar, was converted to Muhammad. I wish Muhammad Ayaz of my son. So can you imagine the kind of anger Tipu led with? But you could do nothing as long as Hyder was alive, because this was Hyder's boy. Though a slave, he had a great regard for this boy. And as they grew up, both Tipu and Hyder, and Tipu and this boy, Ayaz Khan showed such valor an understanding of the situation in Srirangapatnam, the geopolitical situation of those days, that Hyder decided to even actually have offered him to become the governor of Chittordur. Okay? Which the boy refused. The boy refused this by saying that, look, I'm not literate. How can I be the governor of some place without being literate? And Hyder is supposed to have told him, listen, hold a whip in one hand. They call it a corolla. Hold a whip in one hand, and you'll find you'll be a very good governor. That's all you need. Don't depend on these people who use pen and paper. A sword works better sometimes. So it's a funny lesson because Hyder himself was not a very educated man. Though Tipu was very, very literate and very learned. So Hyder used to try and tell this boy, be gutsy, don't be afraid of anything. Hold a corolla in your hand, hold a whip in your hand, and you will rule the place. Later on, in fact, Ayaz Khan was made the governor of Chittordur. Oh no, Bidnur. He was made the governor of Bidnur, and he did pretty well for himself. So this where story takes a strange turn is Hyder dies. And the first thought that came to Tipu was, I should get rid of this guy. This guy was compared to me all my life. The guy on whom his father placed so much trust. I must destroy him. Otherwise, I cannot rule in peace. I mean, Tipu was certain that he was going to be the next ruler in Mysore. He was the Sultan and all that. But he had to destroy. This boy, this man now, Ayaz Khan, got wind of it. And he escaped. Even the messenger who came to him to give him that news was immediately killed. So no news spreads as to where he's disappearing to. And he disappeared to a place called Mazgaon near Mumbai. Those days Bombay. He went there. But one interesting aspect is, it is said that it is from him, Ayaz Khan, that the British understood the fortifications of Srirangapatnam and knew that the weakest point was the Watergate. And it's through the Watergate that finally they breached and stormed Srirangapatnam in the third battle of Mysore Wars, the third battle. And that's how they killed Tipu. So you look at the connection, how somebody in my family had to, become what he became, and eventually this Nambiar was responsible for indicating the breach in the fort and having Tipu killed.
Wow.
So this is what fascinated me about this story.
So there is a huge legacy in your family of a lot of men who have served with kings.
Well, it is the nature of that clan. Nambiar's Nayars, they're the Kshatriyas of the what called the Rajputs, they're not. No. So this has been their tradition. They were men who bore arms, and in the hierarchy, they were the ones who were the protectors of the temple, protectors of the kingdom. So there would have been many. And weighed by the number of weapons that most Nair families possess, even today, old weapons. It's very apparent that somebody in the house was practical, including ladies, mind you.
Wow. Brilliant. Now, this last segment, I am going to ask you a few very direct questions. If there's any question that you do not wish to answer or you're uncomfortable, you can just show me a thumbs up. I will move on to the next one. And this is essentially to capture some content, capture the essence of your stories in its rawest form, but juice it out for a quick viewer. Yeah, for a quick viewer, a quick listener. Okay. Do you suggest that girls should learn martial arts and karate fighter?
Absolutely.
Why?
What is a girl? Another human being who can come and attack, who can find herself in a very vulnerable situation. And it's not that she intended being there, but it's happened down history all the time. If a girl can fight back as much as any man can, it is essential they learn to defend themselves.
Amazing. I was hoping you'd give this answer. Perfect. My next question to you is that, have you ever faced a life and death situation that you can share?
Well, this much I can say that I have faced on 3 or 4 occasions, but the circumstances and the outcome of it I cannot share.
Okay, no problem. What would you like to, give your next generation as a task to do? You picked up collecting coins. What would you give your next generation as a task to do? Maybe your sons or your grandsons, that would enhance their life.
Well, I tell you this, I found it very confusing, amazing actually, that today's generation, often when you talk to them about the various hobbies you can be involved in, they say, well, I don't know, but I just don't have the time. And I go back in my mind and think of all the things I've been involved in and doing, both physically, intellectually, or, in terms of the time I spent, whether it be martial arts or coins collection or historical research or so many other things I did, including raising a family. I often wondered, where is the problem with time? You've really been given 24 hours, I've been given 24 hours. It's not time management, it's energy management.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Discipline.
Absolutely.
You know how to carve woods, you know how to paint, you know martial arts, you are a deep enthusiast, and you know a lot about history. Out of all the art forms that you know, which one is your favorite and why?
Well, I don't have a favorite art form or hobby. Tomorrow, if I was to discover something that really intrigues me, arouses my interest, I'd go after it till the end. That's what we need to be. We need people who would find something which seems unimportant to others. But because he sees a passion in it, go as far as you will. You might discover you have found something which will suddenly interest everybody else because it's the depth of your discovery.
You live in a farmhouse in Bangalore, inside almost a forest, with so many animals. You've got cats and dogs and rabbits and a whole bunch of animals. And I heard that you also have a special guest, which is a king cobra living with you.
I would say it's a king cobra. It's a very large cobra, yes. King cobra is a species in itself, okay? This is a very big cobra. What had happened was, when I was buying that land, there was a zingy mound at one corner of the land. And I was told when I bought the land that it would disturb this mound. There's a snake living there. There's common beliefs in the south, but this was not just a kind of a termite mound. There was extra rocks and soil around there. So someone told me, look, that creature's got more right to this land than you. You came later. That's probably been living there for a generation though. So I decided to build my house away from this mound. That mound still exists. The snake still comes out once in a while. And on sudden full moon nights, they come out. And it's not any other reason they come out. Because there are more insects, the more frogs around. So it comes, I've seen it, photographed it a couple of times. It's huge. But it's lived there with me for about 8 years.
Wow. I heard that you went to meet the world famous artist M.F. Hussain. And he took one painting from you, which is the painting of the 3 women. And he gave you a painting. Can you just tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah. Basically, I didn't go to meet him. We just met by accident. There was something called the Shankar's Children's Painting Competition going on in Kolkata, of Calcutta of those days. I was a tea planter. I had come to our office in Chowdhury Road. And I just happened to have some free time. I was wandering around and I saw this painting competition going on. There were a whole lot of children on the floor. They were painting away. When I suddenly saw this bearded man walking in kurta pajama, bare feet. He was not so well known. He was quite well known. This was, I'm talking about 1988. And he just walked in and he was probably being called to judge the, before you do all prizes, to judge the quality of paintings. And he saw that I was the only other adult around who showed some interest in painting. So we happened to just sit and talk. I didn't know he was MF Hussain, really speaking, except that he looked very familiar because the Illustrated Weekly in those days carried some pictures of him as being an artist who did some kind of hoardings for movies. So I sort of recognized him, but I was not sure. As we spoke, I understood he was this man called MF Hussain. Okay, he was so big into painting. Then, as we were talking, I suddenly remembered something about horses that I had seen again in the Illustrated Weekly. And I asked him, are you this person called Hussain who does these paintings? And he told me, yes, why? So I showed him. I did a painting, took a brush and took me while he was walking around. I did a little painting, sitting with some of the kids, of 3 women. So there was a series of paintings I was doing in those days, which was going by the theme 3 women, okay? Whether they're 3 sisters or mother and 2 daughters, or whatever, there were always 3 women in the painting. That was my theme I used to be doing. Like this man was doing corporate horses, okay? So he came back, he gave me a big smile, he said, not bad. Okay, so I kept it there. I signed it and I kept it there for him. It was still dry. So he picked up a piece of paper and did a few horses. And he was amazing. His hands were very sure, did very fast. And he handed it over to me without my knowing what the value of that painting was, till many years later.
So thank you so much for this amazing podcast, this amazing time that you spent with me over here on this episode. I have so many more questions to ask you. I have researched so much about you, your life, your journey, and I've gone as far as this, that I also know that you have a very close cousin also who knows cutlery, but I haven't asked you about it. But I know that he's also extremely good in it. But I will have to end today's episode because it's been a while. But thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, which you have not given so many people across the country, maybe overseas, across the world. I think my podcast is one of the few places where a person can actually find you with so much of not just information about your life, but you've carried the artifacts, you've carried so many things with you. I really appreciate it. I'm humbled that you've spent time with me today. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome, and I thank you very much for inviting me. I don't do this often, so it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.